If you're a high performer looking to grow and make an impact, but feeling stuck, underappreciated, and burned out at work, you're in the right place. I'm Melissa Vining, and this is the Job Search for High Performing Misfits podcast. I help high performers leave draining jobs behind, reclaim their careers, and land roles in organizations where they can thrive. Tune in for tips, insights, and inspiration for your journey to fulfilling work that fits you. Welcome back to Job Search for High Performing Misfits. Today I'm here with Sonya Weigle, who's an executive and leadership consultant for women in biotech. After more than 20 years as a biotech executive, she saw so many brilliant women struggle to move forward in their careers, not because they lacked expertise, but because they were trying to navigate a new chapter using an old version of themselves. Now, as founder and CEO of NextStageBio Advisors and the Catalytic Collective, Sonya guides leaders to reinvent their careers and scale their companies without burning out or losing their sense of self along the way. Sonya, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. And by the way you packaged together my whole bio, and that was beautiful. I'm going to have to take the transcript of that and borrow that. That was great.
Please do. Yeah, that's some of what I do as a career coach. So I'm glad that it fit.
It absolutely did. You're obviously very good at what you do.
Well, thank you. That's a great way to start. So can you tell us a little bit about your story, Sonya, about your own background and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I went straight into global consulting after graduate school and absolutely loved it. I was traveling 5 days a week, and consulting really suits my personality. I tend to say that I've got the attention span of a hummingbird, right? So I like to do multiple things, multiple times, multiple hats. And so the idea of having lots of clients, different projects, all of that that really, really did suit me very well. And I tended to focus in the life sciences space. So that's really where the love for life sciences and biotech sort of began. But along the way, had my 3 children, and with each child, I did a career pivot. The first one being probably the most impactful because it was the most unexpected, fully expected, since I was on the partner track at this global firm, to have my baby, have a nanny, keep it moving, keep it rising. I took a look at that baby and I said, I can never leave this child. Suddenly the idea of being on a plane every week was out of the question, and I had to course correct a bit. So that's when I went into the corporate world. So, my idea was that I could still add value and have a career and enjoy it and be a mom at the same time, which was mostly true. Not entirely true, but it worked until I got pregnant with my second.
Yeah.
I had this big old belly, and I had a 2-year-old calling me nanny mommy, and I was chasing trains, planes, and automobiles again, and it didn't feel right. And I also knew in my spirit that if I didn't slow down and take the time to raise these kids, I would have not just regret, but remorse over that later in life. That meant, though, taking a huge leap, leaving my career, leaving the financial responsibility fully to my husband. And, but the benefit was I got to look at these little people every day. And it's probably how we ended up with a third. And that's when I really launched my entrepreneurial pursuits. So I had my consultancy in 2000 with the second baby. The third baby, I launched a networking organization for working mothers who left the jobs to come home and raise their kids and start their businesses. And I'm sort of on a track of doing that. That's really what I needed in my career at the time. But when I finally did go back to work full time, it was in my own consultancy in the life sciences space, doing merger and acquisition integration and human capital consulting. And that's really what I've been doing ever since.
That's great. I think that really speaks to what you do in helping people design work that fits their values. And it all goes back to your career story of thinking, oh, I'm going to do this thing. And then suddenly something happens in your life and maybe it's not aligned with your values anymore. And I think that can be really challenging for a lot of people, and especially a lot of high performers and a lot of women and a lot of parents, where we're spending so much time then supporting other people and putting their needs first. And how do you find that, either for you or for the clients that you work with, you can start to identify your needs, your non-negotiables, the things that you value at this point in your life, and start to design your career around that.
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I love that you place it at all stages of your career, because I really did first experience that very early on, young in my career, young motherhood. And back in, when did I do that? 2000? This was before social media. There was no LinkedIn. Monster.com had just emerged when I left consulting to go into corporate when my first baby was born in 98. The taking the opportunity or the challenge, facing the challenge to do that was extraordinarily difficult because technologically it was very hard to start a business and coding my own websites and just all of that, but also socially is not so you went to grad school and you've got this great job and you're leaving it to get, like, it just didn't. And then the mommy wars were big back then too, the working moms versus stay-at-home moms and just all of that. And so when I look at my stage of life in my career now and where I've focused the Catalytic Collective, it's almost like those babies, just the way those babies have now grown up, I hope so have my needs and what centering myself looks like now as a recent empty nester, as someone that's had now 25 plus years in the workplace, almost 30 years of marriage. And it's like, okay, now I really get to decide what's next for me based on my own values. I've done that. I've made the choice to do that throughout my career, but for the first time, I really feel like I can center myself.
Yeah.
And so I work with other women who want to do the same. I do focus on women who are in the C-suite or very senior level executives in life sciences and biotech, and with at least 20 plus years of professional experience. And the reason I do that is because I'm creating spaces and rooms where we're looking for true peer-to-peer connection. So from a professional standpoint, if you're in the life sciences, we sort of share a glossary of terms so that the conversations that we have mean something to us. And like, look at the career path. I want you to have enough lived experience, enough catalytic experiences to stitch together to that one catalytic moment where you decide you want to focus on yourself. We have that in common as well. And wanting to take that journey to experience that transformation is almost the ticket to entry to be able to get into these spaces with us to have these really cool conversations. But that lived experience also we share as women, aging parents, adult kids, menopause. I mean, they're just things that we have to think about. But what we have in common is the desire to center ourselves first, rewrite our next chapter, and do it through the lens of how we view freedom now. And that's our non-negotiable. So whatever we plan going forward, whether it's reinventing the career that we're in still and love, but doing it in a way that doesn't deplete us, or taking the leap to create something entirely different, utilizing all your skills and your passions and your experience and your network and applying it to yourself.
Yeah.
Be the self-beneficiary of your own brilliance as opposed to pushing it out.
Yeah.
It's your time to do that now.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there are so many different things in there that you said that were important. And I think we should start with the part about reinventing yourself, because you said that some of the women that you're working with are maybe trying to start something completely new. And I know that you're really passionate about helping them do that and move through those different stages of life so that they can really design something that works for them in that moment. So, can you tell us a little bit more about what that can look like for someone? How can they start to feel like they're reinventing themselves without starting over, without leaving behind all the great things that they've done so far?
Yeah, the thing is to really sit and appreciate yourself and everything that you've been through, all of your experiences, what you bring to the table, and what would happen if you directed them inward. So, the companies you've worked for, the strategic plans you've executed, the children you've raised, whatever it is, have all been the beneficiary of everything that you've worked to accomplish. So if you take those same things and then you think about what kind of freedom do I want next? Is it location freedom? Is it time freedom? It's obviously financial freedom, or else, what are we doing, right? But whatever that freedom is, that's the lens now that we're going to build. And so on the other end of that, it's either I love the role that I'm in, but I want to do it differently. Success is no longer defined by obligation. Success is defined the way that I choose to define it. And when you do that, you actually become that much more productive, that much more impactful, that much more powerful. Or like I've got some women who are coming out of biotech CEO roles, right? So they've done the hard things. And now they want to start an app. I have one who wants to be a travel blogger. I've got several that have had a book in their bellies for years and they want to finally write it. For some, that means, okay, it's a parallel path where I'm going to do what I'm doing, right? And my current role, but I'm going to create the pathway so that when that off ramp comes, there's no question about where I'm going next. We're really great multitaskers. And so we can live the present and plan the future at the same time, if that future is something we're looking forward to and we're planning with intentionality.
Yeah.
So that when you get there, it's not, oh no, what am I going to do? Oh no, my kids have gone to college. What am I going to do now? Oh no, my biotech just sold. What am I going to do now? Oh no, the trial failed. What am I going to do now? And it's based on my own experience. The last 2 years, I've taken this journey where I was chief people officer at a biotech. The data was going to go one way or the other. Either way, I knew that whatever happened, I wanted to have an exit that honored what I wanted to do next. And so I spent those 2 years thinking about and building what it turned out to be was the Catalytic Collective is what I wanted to jump off into.
Yeah.
So that's what I help women do.
Yeah, that's great. I love that intentionality of planning ahead and understanding, even from an early phase, right? Like building for the next step. And I think sometimes that can also look like a portfolio career or like building something on the side while you're still doing something else. Can you tell us more about what does a portfolio career mean? What does that look like for people that you often work with?
Love this whole idea of a portfolio career, and I was living it without knowing what the term was. And then there was a book I was reading called The Life Brief, and that's where I was first introduced to that term. And it was like, oh, that's what I'm doing. And it's about, what do I value most? What lights me up? What would I do if I didn't get paid? That's sort of time honored question, but we all have an answer to that question, right? But how do you create a career around that thing or things? And this is irrespective of where you are in your career or in your life stage. This is the advice that I give my 20-year-old daughters, or my daughters who are in their 20s, and they're trying, they're working it through. My middle daughter is genius at this. She's an actor, she's a singer, she's a model, she's an interior designer. She's doing great at all of them, and she loves her life. Everybody should live life like that. So, for someone who's really thinking about what that next stage might be, it's, what do I value most? Where would I want to spend most of my time? Quite often, it's not what you've spent your career doing. Sometimes it's something completely different. And I think with the advent of technology and AI and other things, there are so many more tools available where you can do fractional executive work, where that takes 20 hours a week of your time. What are you going to do with the other 20? Well, maybe 10 of it you're going to work on your book. Maybe the other 10 you're going to work on podcasts or speaking. That's how I've put my career together. That's how I'm working right now. And I love it. So I get to spend my time working with companies to do really cool and important things in early drug development, speaking to awesome people like you on awesome topics like this, and working on that book that I've had in my belly for years and years and years. And so every day is amazing.
Yeah. And I think it's a great option for people like you. And at the beginning, you said you love to wear a lot of hats. You love to have a lot of things going on. And that lends itself so well to the portfolio career. And I think that's true of a lot of our audience too. It's like we get bored if we have to do just one thing or focus in just one area. So it's a nice way of expanding like the things that you're doing and opening up maybe even new doors that you didn't know we're going to open up just because you're doing something different and you're doing all of these different things.
I'm a firm believer that if you align with your purpose and you really take the time to figure out what that is, and then you face the fear of chasing that purpose, it opens opportunities just come and it just opens and it just opens and it's an amazing thing. It's just the fear bridge that people have to get over that prevents them from doing that. But my experience has been, and anyone else that I know that has done this on the other end of it, it's just this glorious opportunity to do the work that you love and to earn a good living and to just be happy.
Yeah. What helped you get over that fear?
That's a really good question. I think in a lot of ways there just wasn't much choice. I'm just the way that I'm built. I'm just not one to sit in dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
I just don't do well with that. I'm a very curious person. I'm very I like new experiences. I've spent much of my career doing brand new things. I've been in commercial real estate, had never done that before. I hosted a global radio show, had never done that before. Getting into biotech was something I had never done before. I've spent a lot of my time Googling phrases and terms while I'm on calls. It's like, what does that mean? For me, that's fun and that's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I think you kind of alluded to this idea of centered passion, which I've heard you talk about in another interview. Can you tell us more about what you mean when you say centered passion?
Sure. It's looking from within. I mean, nobody knows you better than you do, but we don't often give ourselves the luxury to just sit and really understand, who is, I mean, I kind of went back to my childhood. What were the things that innately I love to do? What does that look like in the modern world? What does that look like with grown up me? And what are the things that I value in and around that? And for me, it's time with my family. My children are grown, but we love to spend time together. My children are spread all over the country. We're only together as a family of five a couple times a year, but we are so good at being intentional when we are together that I've got one kiddo in San Francisco, one in LA, and one in New York. And my business is centered in New York, LA, and San Francisco. That's where my clients reside. So every business trip I take, I get to go squeeze a kiddo.
Yeah.
That to me is the centered and values driven approach to business.
Yeah, I love that because you clearly aligned what you were doing with your values and you took some time to reflect on that and to really figure out what is it that's most important and how can I build something around that rather than just reacting to something that exists already.
Yeah. And sometimes it can surprise you and be very scary. The things that I know centered around what brings me joy also required my putting myself out. I'm a very private person and I got a very real fear of being seen. But in order to live into this next chapter, it's requiring me to do just that. And that's a fear bridge too, right? I mean, sometimes because it's true. This is what I want to do. You can feel it in your gut. But the things that are required of you to actually execute on that sometimes can be very surprising and scary and take you out of a comfort zone. But I've always said what you want doesn't reside inside your comfort zone anyway. So
Yeah.
off you go.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, I feel like I'm saying that so often to people because so much about the job search and career development is scary and it is uncomfortable. And it's not meant to be comfortable, really, right? Like, if you're comfortable, you're probably doing it wrong. So I love what you just said there. And I think also, what you're touching on is something else that I talk about a lot on the podcast, which is authenticity. And I think you're saying that you had to be maybe even more authentic during this phase and during this figuring out what to do next. How was your experience or how does that feel to you?
I use the word authentic a lot, and it can sometimes be maybe overused to the point where people don't appreciate how powerful the word is because authenticity will cost you. You've got to face the inner parts of yourself that maybe you've put away or you've not had the luxury of allowing to surface. I've got one person I'm working with who's in finance, and the thing that lights him up most are sales related activity. It has nothing to do with finance. So trying to get him to see that you don't want to be in finance. That's not your authentic self. You don't, you can see it on somebody's face, right? I mean, they shrink a little bit here and they really light up over here, but chasing or allowing that authenticity, it's going to cost you some things, but it's going to gain you so much more. You just have to, that's why the work that you do is so important, is helping people to confront that, see that, and then pursue it so that they can really get where they want to go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I think that also brings me into something else that I wanted to talk to you about that I know you talk about a lot, which is women in biotech and consulting, because I think we often think of those fields as being very male dominated. And I could see that a woman in maybe the wrong context could feel like she has to mask some of her authenticity in those spaces. Have you found that to be true?
It is very hard, but very common to be the only woman in the room.
Yeah.
And in scientific spaces where things are very binary, I mean, the data is the data, the numbers are the numbers, right? And so, but what makes women so powerful is our intuition and allowing intuition to lead. And in something like biotech, intuition is so powerful because at the end of the day, we're bringing new drugs, novel drugs, new discoveries to untreated diseases and conditions, things that can change the quality of life for people and their families in a very real way. That's heart-centered work. That's not binary at all. So for a woman to be at the helm of these efforts is really fantastic. And I think it's important not to conflate biotech with big pharma, because the biotech space is the innovation space. It's very expensive to do this. And at the end of the day, we don't sell the drugs, we develop the drugs. And it's high risk, and it's risky at every moment. But a woman led by her intuition, leading with her intuition, and teaching and allowing others to do the same in a very unique way, it's so well suited for the biotech industry when you really think about it. But what the Catalytic Collective does is it allows women who are, sort of in that space, in that pressure every day, to come together into a safe space where, again, we've got those common terms and we can talk about the FDA approvals, we can talk about trial design, we could talk about all of those things, but we can also talk about our authenticity. We can also talk about our journeys. We can also talk about how to center ourselves as we do this important work at these very high levels.
Yeah. Did you find that you had an experience with being the only woman in the room and being able to be more authentic?
That has evolved over time. So when I first started my career, it was very, very hard to have your voice heard or to insist that your voice be heard. And part of it was because you're more junior and everything else. But, I have found that as long as I'm true to who I am, there's a strength that comes from somewhere that says, my voice needs to be heard in this moment. But for my voice in this moment, things may go sideways and I'm going to speak up. And so I find that the men in this industry tend to be very receptive to that. I've worked in financial services, commercial real estate. It's sort of a different, it's harder. Even global consulting, it's harder. I have found that the executive men that I work alongside have been very, very receptive to and supportive. And in my career personally, have opened up doors and had valued my voice as a woman in the room. So I've actually had very, very good experiences with that.
That's great. And I think some of what I heard you say is that you're recognizing your own strengths and you're using those in those contexts, which obviously gives you it leads to more success because you are using those strengths that you inherently have. And I think it probably gives you more confidence too because you're leaning into your strengths in that moment.
Yeah, I think women, everybody has intuition, right? But I think women have just a unique set of skills where that's concerned. And you can very quietly lean in with that intuition and you walk away and they wonder, how does she know that? Or where did she come up with that? Or, and I'm just reading. I'm reading faces. I'm reading energy. I'm listening for the unspoken word. I'm using my intuition to do all of that. And I'm putting together pieces that allow me to say and to do things that sometimes take people by surprise.
Definitely. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about what you're working on right now and what you're excited about with the Catalytic Collective and NextStageBio Advisors.
Where we are with the Catalytic Collective is it's evolved into a invitation only waitlist essentially. So an email list because I'm hosting online events. I'll do dinners and other things. And so basically, it's an invite only access to these events when I do them. And what I love about these events is they are intentionally very small. So, like if I do a dinner, it'll just be 12 women. And the last one I had, we talked about our non negotiables over a wonderful meal. And the reason why they're small and the reason why it's an application based invitation only list is because I just want to honor and preserve the pieces that allow us to be powerful as a collective. So, years of experience, biotech, all of those things. And I'm hoping that this year we'll be able to take these events and maybe have a retreat by the end of the year or to do something like that. So that's what I'm excited about with the collective. And then with NextStageBio Advisors, I'm very excited to be working with a number of companies who are at various stages of development. Some are brand new, need to hire their first employee. They need to build a full team, which in that case might be 5, 10, 20 people. I've got others that are at a phase 3 and they're looking to commercialize and they need to bring on an entire commercial team. And I've got companies in between. But for my team in particular, it's been really exciting to bring folks in that I've worked with in the past to be part of NextStageBio Advisors. Almost all of my team are people that I've worked with before. And so I'm so honored that when I reach out, they'll come, yes, we would love to join your team. And that's what's most exciting to me is just developing them and giving them opportunities to experience different disease states, different corporate cultures, different, just helping to build all of these up. And that's what I love most about it.
That's great. So, where's the best place that someone can go to connect with you and to learn more about your work?
Sure. So you mentioned my LinkedIn, right? I am on LinkedIn. And you could go to nextstagebioadvisors.com or thecatalyticcollective.com.
Excellent. And those will be in the show notes for anyone looking for those. And I always like to end with a final word of wisdom. So, when you're thinking specifically about the women that you work with, what's maybe one common piece of career advice that you find is really not effective for them? And what would you give them permission to stop doing today?
Oh, two really great questions. I think what's not effective and what I would ask them to stop doing is limiting themselves based on what the facts look like, but instead lean into what your feelings are telling you. So if the facts tell you, I need to have a job right now, and I'm going to take anything so I can have a job right now, I would ask you to really lean into how that makes you feel and how real are those facts. And is there time and value in taking a beat to say, how do I feel and what would I really want to do? And then cross that fear bridge to pursue that thing. Because often the reward is much, much bigger than that sort of constrained view will land you in that, in that next job. That's a much more constrained way of doing things. Just face the fear bridge, cross it, and then, just conquer your next chapter.
Yeah, I love that idea because I think so much of the time we're focused on the fear part because that is the scary part. That's the thing that's like right there in the front of our minds. And we neglect the potential great outcome that's on the other side. So focus on that part instead. That'll help drive you.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. Well, Sonya, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
If you love this podcast, be sure to hit subscribe, leave me a review, and share it with a friend so we can help more high-performing misfits find work they love. See you next time.